Welcome back, AP. So right now it's Sunday, and you guys have either just landed back in Jersey or you're fixing to head out. I hope y'all had a fantastic time in Florida. We're still surprisingly on pace for where we need to be right now, which is quite frankly absolutely phenomenal. I did not see this coming, but you know what? It's pretty great, and I'm excited about it, and that's why we're all going to get fives, right? So, continuing forward, though, we now got to talk about the nationalism trend in Italy, okay? So, when we talk about nationalism being kind of like a trend or whatever, we're mainly talking about Germany, or AKA Prussia, and Italy. Now, we talked about how Napoleon III created a big nationalist government with French nationalism at its core. And we talked about his reinvention and bringing back of the authoritarianness of France following their revolution. But now we're getting into the first nationalism movement that was very, very successful, and that's the one in Italy. Well, first and foremost, of course, it's coming off the tail end of the Congress of Vienna. We've talked about the Congress of Vienna about 85 times. But it's just important because when Napoleon the First, when Napoleon Bonaparte took over that much of Europe, now you're still dealing with who gets what when he is deposed and when he has been exiled finally for the second time, right? So following his expulsion of Napoleon, Italy had to be reorganized because Napoleon actually took over a large chunk of northern Italy, but stayed out of the Papal States, right? The northern provinces of Lombardy, which is where Milan is, and Venetia, which is where Venice is, were taken over by Austria under Metternich, right? So the Austro-Hungarians, the Austrian Empire, took in that big extra chunk of Italy. Then Sardinia and the Piedmont were actually given back to the Italians because of their extreme amounts of wealth, right? So, sorry, I'm losing it. There we go. So Sardinia and the Piedmont were given back to an Italian monarch. Excuse me. Florence was then going to be a shared north-central Italian country with a bunch of other smaller states, but still ruled by a bunch of local Italian princes, okay? So the papacy is going to control Rome in the center, all right, creating the papal states in Rome and that big swath of area. And then France is going to control southern Italy, including Naples and Sicily. Actually, specifically next to Naples and Sicily, in parentheses, put the Bourbons, because they were still in task with controlling that entire area. So, Italy before nationalism. Here we go. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, bang, there you go, right? So, this entire area was controlled by, right here, this whole area right here is the Florence area, controlled by different Italian monarchs. This is going to be controlled by an Italian monarch, that's Sardinia. And then these two were given to Austria. See, Austria-Hungary right here. And then the kingdom of the two Sicilies, including Naples and Sicily, were given to the Bourbons. Okay, so looks kind of like that as well. But as you can see, it was just very, very fragmented. So to keep going forward. All right. Let me get my timer on so I make sure I don't make this thing too long, okay? So, going forward, though, a lot of new ideas about Italy and what Italy is and how Italy should be as a country is going to pop up between the Congress of Vienna in 1815 and the failed revolutions of 1848, right? Remember when we talked about all those failed revolutions? Except for the semi-successful one in France where Napoleon III was actually elected as a president. The idea of a united Italy actually grew at a massive pace, but all Italians had different conflicting ideas on what that united Italy would look like, who would lead it, different things like that. And as we know, when we talked about French utopian socialism, and as well as French government reform, when you have large groups like your middle class and then your urban workers have a lot of very conflicting ideas and they're not organized, nothing really gets done, right? So the early figures include Giuseppe Mazzini, who was actually exiled out of Italy at one point, and due to his controversial views. But he preached a liberal democratic republic with universal male suffrage and rule by the people. But he wanted Italy to be completely united, including the Papal States and Rome as well. Vincenzo we're just going to call him Vincenzo because I can never pronounce his last name. He preached, get it? Because this guy, that's him. He was a Catholic priest. Ha. Anyway, he preached a federation of states with smaller rulers, but everything was headed up by a progressive pope, right? So that's your conservative end of the spectrum. So you got your conservative end of the spectrum with a progressive pope at the front. You got the Mazzini liberal idea with Democratic, Republican, all universal male suffrage and all this other cool stuff. But then others are going to preach the idea of an autocratic kingdom under the lead of Sardinia and the Piedmont. Because remember, Sardinia and the Piedmont were given to an Italian monarch, right? And they were actually they were like cousins to like several other royal families, cousins to, I believe, the Habsburgs. And they're the Emmanuels. And that idea was doing phenomenally well. Sardinia and the Piedmont were getting a large amount of wealth. They were growing a very large military. They were creating new alliances. They were a very powerful kingdom. So out of the three, you've got the way to the left, the way to the right, and then the kind of in the middle. The kind of in the middle is going to be the one that prevails, right? I'm going to go ahead and put my face down here between these handsome fellas. Now, anyway, so following the failed revolutions of 1848, though, when Austria suppressed them in northern Italy, Mazzini's ideas of like universal male suffrage and a very liberal state, the thing about it is they come off as like a little too idealistic, right? Way too idealistic, too, I can't ever say this word, but like quixotic, Quixotic, but just way too lofty, you know what I mean? Now the Sardinian model is going to be the one that prevails because no one wanted to be headed up by a pope unanimously. So that new king that actually runs Sardinia is this guy over to the right. This is Victor Emmanuel II. Okay, so as you can see, looking at him, a lot of satirical jokes about him. A lot of people didn't like Victor Emmanuel very much, but the people of Sardinia viewed him like this, right? As a great warrior general king, right? As the great leader, kind of the Napoleon after Napoleon was exiled image, right? So Victor Emmanuel, though, is going to set the blueprint of how to unite a country. And so what he does is he gives the task of leading Italy to its nationalism to a brilliant statesman by the name of Count Camillo Benso di Cavour, or, for our sake, Count Cavour, right? Count Cavour is over here. Now, this is Count Cavour as a young man, very handsome, strapping, right? He's got this really sweet neck beard, chin strap action going on. And this is him later on, actually, after he resigned out of rage. We'll get to that in a minute. But he didn't age very well, as you can see. So anyway, but Count Cavour, just to give you a heads up, and like the ideas of who's uniting this country, right, was born to, we're going to put me right there for right now. So he's a statesman. He's a politician, born to a very, very wealthy nobility class, and created a very, very successful business and generated a lot of wealth for himself. This is actually his castle right here that he lived in northern Italy, and there's a massive vineyard out front of it to give you an idea of how wealthy he was, right? So his original ideas were very, very simple. Don't unite all of Italy. Let's just unite northern Italy. Let's start there, right? Sardinia, Lombardy, Venetia, maybe Florence we'll suck them into, but we'll stop at the Papal States because we don't want to get into that, right? And also leave southern Italy out of it because the Bourbons control it. Stay away from France. They're just too daggum strong. So Cavour convinces Victor Emmanuel to create a progressive liberal state, and notice I did that in quotes because it really wasn't that liberal in northern Italy. And he wanted to do that with a new constitution. Of course, we talk about this all the time. A new constitution was written. So railroads, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about all this stuff happening that we only have one. Now, railroads and infrastructure being beefed up in northern Italy, and also opposition to church privileges in the sense that don't let the church throw its weight around so much, kind of limit them to just, the Pope, right? Let him enact his ideas. Let's appoint our own bishops. Let's get out of this idea that they don't pay taxes, though. Let's make them a part of the state, right? So separate them from government, but make them contribute to the state. However, step one to nationalism under the Cavour model is you got to gain a big ally. So Cavour creates a massive alliance with Napoleon III. Very smart idea, right? Genius idea when you think about it, simply because they are growing at such a rapid rate. And Napoleon III is looking to bring France back to its former glory. So Cavour decides, under the actual first off advice from Victor Emmanuel, he's like, look, we're going to support them in this little Crimean war they're having against Russia, right? So we're going to support France and Britain, and then that way we'll actually gain some large allies. So then they convince France to help them drive Austria out of Lombardy and Venetia. Lombardy, again, where Milan is, and Venetia, where Venice is. Cavour convinces Austria to attack on the borders of the Sardinia and the Piedmont and the border of Lombardy, and it actually is a massive success. A huge Franco-Sardinian force met them and claimed victory and pushed Austria out of Lombardy and out of Milan altogether. Weirdly enough, though, France abandoned the cause. Napoleon III is like, all right, no, we're not going for Venetia, though. We got to pull out right now because I don't want to piss off the Pope, right? So, because there were all these French Catholics that were like, you can't do this. The Pope doesn't like this idea of an autocratic Italy with a northern ruler at the top of it. They like the idea of the Pope ruling over Italy. So, because that they were against that idea, Napoleon decides to pull out, right? So, with that, Cavour did not conquer the rest of northern Italy at first, right? Forced to have a peace with Austria, and he resigns out of a fit of rage. Remember when I told you that Cavour didn't look that great in his later life? That's what he looked like when he resigned, right? He resigned because he didn't get to claim Venetia, okay? So, however, Cavour did one amazing thing, and he inspired the middle class, right? So he inspired the middle countries around Florence to rise up and overthrow their governments. And then they all voted almost unanimously to join with Sardinia. So Cavour didn't even have to do half the other work. They were like, I love this idea of an autocratic, yes, Italy, red, white, green, basta, like let's be one unit together, right? Put aside our historical differences and let's come together. So Cavour just inspired all these people. They rose up, they overthrew their local princes, and they combined with Sardinia. So now you're looking at a very huge chunk of Italy that is now one united Italian country. And then you've got Venetia over there, which is still controlled by the Austrians, but we'll get to that later. So Cavour returned to power in 1860 and to keep France at bay from stopping the unification process because they were encroaching on Rome. Cavour gave France and Nice, Savoy, to keep them happy, right? So, because France, okay, I'll show you the map. Well, here we go. I'll show you the map again real quick to let you know. There we go. So, Nice is right here. Savoy is right here. They gave those to France to keep them happy because they were actually, when they pulled up this whole chunk, they were getting dangerously close to the Papal States. So to keep the French happy, they said, look, take these other little countries over here. We don't need them anymore. We don't like them that much anyway. So there we go. And then there. Now, all the while, completely unrelated, this guy over here who looks exactly like someone from a movie that I cannot figure out. Dude, like if someone of y'all can figure out who this guy looks like, he looks exactly like somebody from a movie I like a lot because of his eyes and stuff like that. But he looks like a current day celebrity, and I can't figure out who it is. But his name is Giuseppe Garibaldi, right? So Giuseppe Garibaldi, a huge Italian super patriot, right? Supports the Sicilians. He's down in the south of Italy, right? Underneath the Papal States. He is the exact opposite of Cavour, but a very, very, very powerful, similar goal. Wants to create a united Italy. He's the son of a poor fisherman. He believes in uniting Italy under violence and aggressiveness, right? If we're going to be Italian, we're going to take it over by force. It's not going to be a nicey-nice kind of diplomatic thing. We're going to do it by quickly and by force. He did not believe in aligning with other Europeans. So he assembled a group of 1,000 volunteers. Only 1,000 guys. It's not even that many. And he's known as the Red Shirts, right? And they landed on the island of Sicily to liberate the Italians from the oppressive French landlords, right? Now, remember, these are cousins of the Bourbons. So by this point, Napoleon III was like, let them loan it. I don't really care. But he wasn't about to like create a huge war over something that an old royal family owned, right? So to liberate them. But surprisingly enough, he didn't even have to do that much work because the poor Sicilians actually rose up and helped overthrow the landlords with him, okay? So he actually inspired a giant revolt. And so Sicily is going to completely overthrow everything. They're going to take over Palermo, which is a large northern Sicilian city. And they're actually going to use guerrilla tactics with all these poor Sicilians to destroy an army and outwit a French army of 20,000. That's insane, right? So, however, due to the fact that Garibaldi is taking up all this new land in the south of Italy, Cavour is quickly going to send Sardinian forces to protect the Papal States. Because remember, let's not piss off France too much, okay? We got to keep the Catholics happy. But not to Rome. Now, keep that in mind. The Papal States is the large area outside of Rome, and Rome is like the capital of the Papal States. So the Sardinians actually occupy the area around Rome. Garibaldi knew that they were coming, and so he did not want to actually bring on the full force of French Catholic fury, but Garibaldi had no desire to lead whatsoever, so he turned the conquered territories that he had in the south of Italy over to Victor Emmanuel and Sardinia, right? So literally, due to a guerrilla leader and then a statesman up north, they had successfully united Italy as the Kingdom of Italy. And it became the Kingdom of Italy in 1860. And so they're going to claim the land known as modern-day Italy by about 1870. They suck Venetia into it in 1866. They bring in Rome and the Papal States in 1870. But Italy is going to create a parliamentary monarchy, neither radical nor completely democratic. So they have a monarchy that has a parliament that helps lead and pass laws and that the people actually vote on. The thing about it is it's actually not that democratic because only 500,000 people could vote out of the 22 million Italian citizens. And also a lot of their problems were not solved up front by this really, really nationalistic, grandiose idea. So however positive things were in France under Napoleon III, and the fact that he created a much more equal, very, very, very democratic, very French idea type of government, Italy had a lot of problems, right? They've been kicked around for most of history, so they had a lot of problems. The north of Italy, under Cavour, very industrious, very quick to progress. South Italy, where Garibaldi came from, very agrarian, very slow-paced, very conservative, not looking to change. Anarchist rebellions are going to blow up in the early 1900s. One of them is actually going to stab the king of Austria's wife to death. It's a whole thing. We'll get into it when we talk about Franz Joseph again. Now, and then Italian immigration is going to be a huge problem. A lot of Italians are going to leave, and they're going to immigrate to places like the United States. So this right here over to the right side is a satirical cartoon of Garibaldi and Cavour creating Italy. And of course, they're building a boot. You know what I mean? So to give you an idea, Cavour, Garibaldi, the two guys that kind of met in the middle and created a combined Italy by 1860 with Victor Emmanuel becoming their king, right? So, but that's it. And then have that done by Tuesday, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, and we'll get back into Prussia. So I hope y'all have a great rest of your break and enjoy Monday off. I don't get it, but you do. I'm hitting my hair the wrong way. I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Y'all have a good one.